hit the big red button.
Sister.
It's pressed. Now, we did, I suppose, when we started with this, all the cameras, worry a little bit about which side and what we look like. We don't care anymore.
No.
But we have an extra load of cameras in here today, and we have visitors, don't we?
Celebrity visitors?
We have a celeb.
Will I wave?
Yeah, show them.
Where is the camera now? This is not a very attractive angle. I'm living with them.
Yeah, so Lucy Kennedy is with me for the weekend, and we're going to go and do a few little bits in a while. But the guys are in the studio with us to see how this all works.
Which is still a mystery.
It is a mystery to us too, how it all works. But anyway, we get going. Now, we're here because we wanted to just do a little wrap up this week. We've done a lot this week, but there was a couple of stories still swinging in the wind. So we thought we'd throw them together and have a little bit of a chat about them.
Yeah.
Charlotte Mulhall, first of all, is finally tasting a little bit of freedom.
Yeah, so she's been granted weekend release. So life sentence prisoners. She's now behind bars almost 19 years, I think.
Is it that long?
Yeah, which would be a long time for a female prisoner. I think the average used to be serving a life sentence would be something around 14 to 15 years. It tended to be a couple of years older for men. They tend to get a life sentence tended to be at least 17 years. Now, Charlotte Mulhall, people, of course, will know her as one of the Scissor Sisters.
One of the Scissor Sisters. So all those years ago, herself and her sister Linda Mulhall went out for a day's drinking, really, with their mother, Kathleen Mulhall, and her then partner, Farah Swaleh Noor. And things got a little out of hand. They ended up back in Richmond Cottages, where Farah Swaleh Noor made a sort of move, really, on Linda. And they had been taking drugs and drinking all day. Tragic family background, actually, with the Mulhalls.
Yeah.
It really was. They basically killed him, and then they dismembered him in the shower over the course of the evening. And they put his remains, his legs, his feet, his arms, his torso, into bags and dumped them in the canal in the early hours of that morning. And they then took his head in a backpack and brought him towards Tala. They took the bus to Tala with the head in the backpack. I mean, it was a story that was gruesome. It was extraordinary. It was interesting forensically because, of course, when he was discovered, when his remains were discovered first, there was no identity. There was no idea who this was.
No, I mean, the first reports were about ritualized killing. You know, that was the initial belief. I mean, it's a complex story when you look back on it. Certainly, I wonder if it had happened at this time, would people have a different perspective on it, given the abuse that was occurred? Obviously,
what do you mean with the domestic abuse between Farah Swaleh Noor and Kathleen Mulhall?
Yes, exactly. And of course, like the two sisters have maybe put it in that context at a later point, saying, while not necessarily justifying the killing, but saying that this context was occurring. But at the time, obviously, the body parts, the two young women carrying them around the city, all of that was, it made international headlines ultimately.
And I mean, even the bones were sent, of the remains were sent for analysis. And the bones were able to tell, the scientists were able to go back and tell the Gardaí where Farah Swaleh Noor had originally come from and also where he had last lived, because the water content of the bone marrow or something. I'm sure the scientists will complain about this, but nonetheless, we're able to actually show that he was living in that part of the North City. And that was the first clue they had.
That was the first clue. Ultimately, then there was CCTV was found of the two Mulhall sisters, getting off buses. And it became a huge, huge story. Now, Charlotte was convicted ultimately of murder. Linda was convicted of a lesser charge of manslaughter. It was described in court that Charlotte dealt the killing blow, I suppose, and that's why the murder charge was laid on her. Ultimately, Linda spent about 10 years in prison, I think. She came out in 2016 and has stayed under the Garda radar since. But Charlotte Mulhall has been probably one of Ireland's longest serving female life sentence prisoners now at this point. She has continued to be in the newspapers at times. She has had some sort of disciplinary problems. But what the prison service do when for people that are that long term sort of inmate, they move them out gradually. So Charlotte Mulhall would have had a couple of hours out first, supervised with a prison officer at all times. They tend to be brought out for events like Holy Communions, maybe brought to a parochial office with a priest. So it's a graduated release, but people do have to get used to coming out, and it's kind of works on a trust system that eventually people get these overnight periods. In recent years, she's been kept in one of these kind of self-contained apartments in prison. Again, the female prisons are markedly different really than the men's prisons, but they have a number of what basically look like student accommodation.
Yeah, they have a little ensuite, and
yes,
I was in it actually when the Doka Centre opened in Joy. John Lonergan was the governor at the time, and he was really compassionate to the female.
Yeah,
there was an awful lot of these drug mules that had been caught, carrying cocaine or whatever on the planes, and they were only doing it to make a bit of money. They usually had kids at home.
Yeah.
And he actually set up a thing with Dubarry shoes to allow them have a little job.
Yeah.
And they were sewing, something on the shoes. And they'd earn a few bob, and they were all sending it home to their children. Like, it was really sad.
Yeah.
But there was also this thing that, so the females are going to be either mothers, or sometimes they go into the prison system pregnant. And I think Charlotte Mulhall was one of those.
She was.
And they allowed them in the Doka Centre, keep the child with them until they're 18 months.
18 months.
In the prison.
Yeah, in the prison.
Yeah. So she did bond with that child, who I'm sure, no doubt now that she's getting, this unaccompanied overnight time. She has a number of children.
Well, yes.
Grown up now.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously their circumstances will have changed over those many years. But both the Mulhall sisters had very, heavy drug problems at the time that they went into prison. So they're obviously the risk with people that have been spent a couple of decades in jail. They come out to a vastly different world, and the risk of relapsing on drugs is very high. So she's out. And
tell you one last thing about her before we move on. And this is, you're hitting a big one now in October. I have the date saved in my
what is it now?
Your daughter actually ratted on you.
Did she?
I have it in my diary. But Charlotte Mulhall, given all that, is 39.
Yeah. So it is.
She's 39, like.
39, yeah.
She's still only a young person.
Exactly. And sometimes when you look back at the coverage, some of that context probably was lost, given the nature of the crime. It was such gruesome and headline news, but maybe the context of their age and the circumstances, the domestic abuse that was occurring, and the fact that the mother, had been a definite victim of Swali Noor. So it's a long. She has 39 is very young when you're 49.
It sure is.
She has a long.
It's certainly very young when you're a
long life ahead of her.
Anyway, headlines. Speaking of headlines, and somebody who just doesn't seem to be able to keep out of them even for a day is Conor McGregor.
Yeah,
and we're back again to this civil action that was taken by Nikita Hand, which a jury found that he had raped her after a Christmas party night out in a hotel in the Beacon Centre in Dublin. He has appealed this. The appeal was a complex situation because two witnesses were supposed to be coming forward that had this whole new evidence that would change the course of the case. They were brought to a certain extent, and then the court was told, actually, we're not giving that evidence to them. There's a Garda investigation into a possible perjury in regards to those, and they've been both arrested and released without charge in the last week. But McGregor lost his appeal, as did James Lawrence.
Well, James Lawrence appealed the costs.
He appealed the costs.
Yeah.
McGregor appealed the
verdict.
The verdict, okay.
Yeah.
So now both are going to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
I mean, there's very few people who can afford or who will bring something like this all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Well, they're seeking to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will still have to accept it. And the Supreme Court, you can't just appeal to the Supreme Court because you believe the verdict wasn't correct. The Supreme Court will only accept it if it is a matter of public importance. So they're there to set kind of legal precedents on case law. Now, Conor McGregor's, so it hasn't been decided if it's accepted. Even his solicitors have described it as being at an early stage. But it seems it's going to focus on one aspect in particular, because you can't obviously bring new evidence into the Supreme Court. The appeal has to be on a point of law.
Point of law, yeah.
So the issue that he seems to be focusing on is the fact that a tape was played of Conor McGregor being interviewed by Gardaí, who were investigating rape at the time. Now, they sent a file to the DPP, and the DPP brought no charges against Conor McGregor. But he was interviewed under caution, and that was videotaped. Now, as part of the civil proceedings, that videotape was played to a jury. And it is, we believe that the Supreme Court appeal is going to focus on that.
On whether or not that should have been brought, it should have been accepted.
It should have been accepted.
The evidence.
Yes, and is it prejudicial or
because it was a criminal investigation at that stage and they used it in a civil case, you mean?
Well, I think also focusing on the fact that Conor McGregor was asked a lot of these questions and he said no comment, and you could see that on the videotape, him saying no comment to a number of questions. Now, he was questioned about that during the civil case, and he said, well, that was on the advice of my lawyer, that I would say no comment, which they would tell you to do. And of course, you're exercising a kind of your right not to, it's a well-established right not to implicate yourself. So I think it's going to focus on whether that should have been shown to the jury or not.
Right, and we'll just finish up today on our little wrap-up with one of your quirky stories that you just love to tell me about. So go on.
Well,
what's today's
I'll read you
gem?
I'll read you the headline, will I?
Do.
Man caught with cash, drugs and dozen Viagra tablets, which would be good in itself.
Yeah.
But it finishes with the 4 killer words, while cycling to mass.
So where did this happen?
Well, this happened in Athlone.
Right.
He was stopped in Athlone. It's a story by Liam Cosgrove, when we do these funny, quirky court cases, I'd say a good percentage of them come from Liam Cosgrove, who works for the same group as us, the media house.
But where's he covering?
He's covering the Midlands.
So it's the Midlands where a lot of this stuff happens.
Or it's just Liam has a good eye for them.
I don't know.
Well.
Oh, you think so?
Yeah, I think it is.
Okay, so we're not actually kind of, shaming people living across the Midlands.
No, but some reporters have a good eye for what's good. But anyway, so Liam McHugh is the guy's name. He's 62. He's from Galway, and he was searched by Gardaí in Athlone last year when en route to Athlone's Friary Church. He describes himself as a man of faith, and he was cycling to a church in a Midlands town to say some prayers.
Right.
But he was caught, unfortunately for him.
Remind me what he had with him?
Well, he had, he has a number of previous convictions. He had €1,465 in cash.
1,000 foot, right.
And he had tablets related to depression and anxiety. So obviously these are prescription drugs.
Yeah, but
he didn't seem to have
prescription to go with them.
Exactly. Now he has an interesting response. He said,
and he had Viagra.
He had Viagra. So his solicitor gave evidence, and he said he tells me he was on his way to the friary to say some prayers. The D10s, he has a prescription now for them, and he has a prescription for the Viagra, and it seems that he has regularized things with his GP.
Okay.
So he might not have had prescriptions at the time, but
we're feeling a bit of compassion for this guy.
We are. I mean, it
wasn't the worst crime, was it?
No, it wasn't the worst crime.
He had a pocket full of pills, and he had a few bob, and he was heading to mass, and presumably after he said his prayers, he was going to go out and have a good time.
Yeah, and of course, there's no God doesn't have a view on Viagra. There's nothing in the Bible that says take it or don't take it. Now, he does have a bit of history, and that may have gone against him.
It may have.
But he was given the Probation Act, and if you want to look at the sad angle to it, a destruction order was made in relation to the seized medications.
Oh, I thought you were going to say to his bike.
No.
He got to cycle off into the distance.
Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, we'll be back next week with plenty more stuff. And I think we'll leave it at that.
We will.
I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.